Through the course of several decades, Tina Turner was the personification of tenacity and innovation. Through her stubbornness and bravery, she was able to light up stadiums, break down barriers in the industry, and inspire millions of people. However, despite the fact that her voice carried a great deal of power, there were some things that she chose not to utter out loud. There were particular names that she denied using. All of the people that worked with Tina, including producers, bandmates, and aides, were aware that there was a private list that was rarely discussed but entirely comprehended. She identified 6 artists who, in her opinion, had violated a boundary to such a profound degree that forgiveness was without possibility. These were not only competitions or struggles over creative ideas. They were emotional and professional betrayals that left scars on both sides of the relationship. Now that her name has been firmly established in the annals of music history and years have passed since her last tour, the truth about these broken relationships has finally come into light. A list of the 6 names that Tina Turner never forgot and never forgiven is shown here. Initially and most profoundly, Ike Turner was the victim. At times, the narrative of Tina Turner's rise to prominence is presented as a triumphant one. On the other hand, panic arrived before the victory, and prior to her transformation into Tina, she was known as Anna Mae Bullock, a young woman from Nutbush, Tennessee, who possessed a commanding voice and had no idea what the future held for her there. Not only was her finding legendary, but it also came at a high price. In the late 1950s, it all started at the Club Manhattan, which was located on East Street. He was a local band leader and session musician named Louis Ike Turner, and he heard her sing and noticed something that was quite uncommon. Talent that is unsurpassed, energy that cannot be equaled, and a spark that could light up any room. Tina was the new name that he offered her. After that, he provided her with a stage, but what appeared to be an opportunity quickly turned out to be a gilded prison. A series of successes, including A Fool in Love and It's Going to Work Out Fine, were recorded by the two of them together. The songs River Deep, Mountain High, and their famous rendition of Proud Mary are all included. Chemistry, power, and rhythm were all visible to the globe. The dynamics, however, were quite different when one looked behind the velvet curtain. People who had previously been a part of Eats and the band later described the environment as one of fear and control. Ike took care of her expenses, including her wardrobe, her finances, and even her diet. In his capacity as a producer, as well as in his role as a husband, he wanted complete loyalty. There was a lack of praise, and rehearsals were extremely difficult. Mistakes were penalized. The abuse, which included both emotional and physical, grew so commonplace that it was almost taken for granted. It was previously said by tour manager Rhonda Graham that she would make her way off stage with bruises and then proceed to give interviews as if nothing had happened. Strength was not the issue, rather it was survival. It was in 1976, while the band was on tour in Dallas, that the breaking point occurred. After suffering through years of quiet and suffering, Tina finally had enough. She made a break for it one evening, following yet another violent episode that had occurred. She was wearing a white suit that was covered in blood, and she had only 36 cents and a mobile gas card in her pocket. After crossing a highway, she booked into a Ramada in using a name that was not properly identified. She faded away for a period of time. She accepted scraps from acquaintances, ate from vending machines, and slept in a motel room throughout the night. However, she gradually began to rebuild, despite the fact that she had no money and no legal claim to the name Tina Turner. When she finally revealed her story to the world in the 1980s, she was able to discover not just her career, but also her identity. The world was astonished not only by the cruelty, but also by her coolness, and she first revealed this to the public in interviews and subsequently in her autobiography, I, Tina. Ike was not mentioned by her in a hostile manner. She hardly ever referenced him in any way. Her lack of response was not an absenteeism. It was a message that was sent. Those individuals who believed that the narrative arrived at its conclusion when she left were not yet aware of the fact that her past was still plagued by a great number of names. What happened to David Bowie when adulation became icy? At the beginning of the 1980s, Tina Turner and David Bowie were at the top of their respective music worlds. One of the most influential figures in the history of glam rock, he was able to reinvent himself with each new album. As she prepared to break down every obstacle that had been placed in her path, she was putting on one of the most impressive comebacks in the history of music. Members in the industry's inner circle discussed the possibility of working together. Both of these global icons are fearless and unrivaled in their ranks. It appeared to be unavoidable. However, in 1983, during a lavish industry party in London that was thrown by a renowned record executive, that potential was shattered in a single instant. Bowie, who was already deep into drinks and surrounded by a mob of admirers, was known for his charisma and his refusal to foresee what would happen next. Rock's darkest corners, trauma, survival, and image-making were all topics that were discussed during the talk, and then he finally said it. Someone who was a former executive at Capitol Records and was there during the exchange says that he made a joke about Tina's history with Ike. A statement along the lines of, well, it builds character, right. Not only was it incorrect, but it was outright cruel. It was completely silence in the room. During that brief moment, Tina, who was only a few feet away, remained still. Then, without uttering a single word, she gave a stiff smile and exited the room. No yelling, no conflict, and no commotion were allowed. The message, however, was apparent to those who had a close relationship with her. An associate who was close to her stated that following it, she never returned his calls. Rather than rage, it was clarity that did it. That instant provided her with all of the information that she required. In the years that followed, a number of producers discussed the possibility of the two of them doing a duet together. Each and every time, Tina declined. The statement "it's not happening" was made to one individual who was extremely persistent. Please do not inquire once more. Tina never stated in public that she was aware of the occurrence. However, people who were close to her claim that she never forgot at any point. That her survival could be reduced to a jest, especially by someone she had previously admired, was beyond forgiving for someone who had experienced years of torture. This was especially true for someone who had been abused. This was an eraser. The next betrayal would strike even closer to the heart because it would not come from a competitor or a colleague, despite the fact that the last one had an impact that was profound. It was someone who she had previously referred to as her sister. I am Aretha Franklin, the sisterhood that became sour. Tina Turner and Aretha Franklin were two of the rare names in the world of soul music that were held in higher esteem than they were. In her own right, each of them was a formidable force. Tina, with her rock-fueled edge and spectacular performances throughout the years. Aretha, with her gospel upbringing and ability to sing with accuracy. On paper, it appeared as though they were destined for a friendship. On the other hand, there was a long-standing undercurrent of tension that persisted behind the public smiles and mutual accolades. This tension was fueled by years of industry gossip and a media that was eager to crown only one of the queens. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, their lives frequently intersected with one another. In addition to redefining what it means for female performers to be, both women dominated the airwaves of radio stations and headlined major festivals. According to the allegations, however, their long, simmering enmity became personal at a rehearsal for an award event that took place in New York in 1971. A stage manager who was present during the conversation observed Aretha making a joke to a colleague, saying, "She yells, I sing." According to the stage manager, there is a possibility that the statement was never published, but it was heard across the industry. It was repeated by the backstage staff, although it was mentioned by the producers. Tina was the one who actually heard it. Throughout the decades, the quote would follow both ladies, subtly distancing them from one another. There were no public debates, no magazine cover contests, and only a growing period of silence. Distance between them continued even when they were scheduled to appear on the same shows. People who were present noticed that there was no interaction, no discussions, no embraces, no shared changing rooms, and that everyone was always polite but always frigid. When producers proposed a Grammy duet including both of these legendary artists in 1983, Aretha consented to participate. Tina declined without providing any explanation. The people who were closest to her understood. There was no use in her appearing to welcome someone who had once devalued her potential with a single sentence, and she did not see the benefit in doing so. From time to time, they came into contact with one another, a grin here, a nod there, but this will never be the case. Following Aretha Franklin's passing in 2018, Tina released an official memorial that acknowledged the significant contribution she had made to the genre of soul music. However, she refrained from referring to her as a friend, a sister, or even a peer with her remarks. There was a respectful farewell, and the distance between them was carefully measured. Authenticity was critically important to Tina Turner. She was a firm believer in the concept of loyalty, and she was also of the opinion that silence often spoke louder than aggression. Due to the fact that Aretha had violated a personal boundary, Tina did not respond with retaliation, but rather with removal. Nevertheless, the next wound on her list was not one that was inflicted by a fellow legend. It originated from a younger star who admired her on stage but put her down when she was not performing her act. An example of a failed promise is Phil Spector. A great producer was born in 1977. Tina Turner was approached by Phil Spector, who is well known for his wall of sound and larger-than-life productions with a chance that appeared to be a career-defining moment. The expectation was palpable throughout the music business. A full-length record, complete creative freedom, and the kind of studio resources that are typically reserved for megastars were all things that Spector promised from the beginning. Tina, who was in the process of writing a new chapter in her life after Ike, experienced the offer as a combination of redemption and rebirth. According to a writer, Spector, who is known for his dramatic flair, was quoted as saying, "Tina Turner is the only female voice powerful enough to handle real rock and roll." That was an unusual compliment coming from a man who was known for being difficult. In addition to the scheduling of rehearsals and the elimination of demos, a studio in Los Angeles was reserved, and musicians were put on standby. One and all were prepared, and then there was nothing, no call, and no explanation. After a few days, weeks passed. The manager of Tina made an effort to follow up. There is no response. With the passage of time, rumors circulated inside the business that Spector had suddenly changed his mind and decided to collaborate with his ex-wife Ronnie Spector instead of continuing his previous endeavors. Simply silence with no warning or apology offered. Tina was taken aback, despite the fact that she had diligently prepared for the sessions by modifying her schedule, practicing her voice, and establishing trust before the sessions began. According to others who were close to her, she was feeling more than disheartened. It made her feel abandoned. It was reported by a sound engineer who collaborated with her during the demo process that she did not engage in ranting or fury. The only thing she did was look around the room and then on to say, "That will never happen again." That was her intention. When she was asked about Spector in subsequent interviews, she hardly did anything to comment. Occasionally, a short nod, and occasionally, a shrug, but the majority of the time, nothing at all. Regardless of the bridge that had been in the past, it was evident that it had been reduced to ash. There were times when Tina Turner did not have public fallouts or yelling tantrums as a result of betrayal. There were times when it came as a surprise, cloaked in broken promises, in a deafening state of stillness. However, if Phil Spector had injured her while she was absent, The subsequent conflict would be a full-scale confrontation with someone whose presence was impossible to ignore. This is Clash of Titans by Elton John. By the year 1999, Tina Turner had completely dominated the stage in every possible way. In addition to being flashy and intelligent, Elton John too was acclaimed for his talent as a showman. He was a global phenomenon. Therefore, the notion of combining the two legends for a special performance was very exciting when it was offered during a Millennium concert that was broadcast on television. One night that will live long in the memory, two legends, two voices. Nevertheless, harmony was never able to take hold behind the scenes. Beginning with the very first rehearsal, there were indications of friction. As someone who is well known for her rigorous preparation and professionalism that is devoid of nonsense, Tina anticipated perfection. She was adamant about having several rehearsals and a choreography that was meticulously synchronized. While this was going on, Elton had a packed agenda and carried with him the demeanor of a seasoned professional who did not feel the need to be micromanaged with his schedule. According to a backup singer who was there during the rehearsals, the tension reached its peak when Tina interrupted the band in the middle of a song and requested that Elton tighten up a portion that she believed was lacking in intensity. She spoke in a manner that was clear and not harsh. According to the singer, he lost his temper. They referred to her as impossible and said that she was behaving like a drill sergeant. It was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Following a series of hours of heated debates and retakes that were characterized by passive aggression, Elton eventually stormed out of the recording studio. It was a race against time for the production team to get both of them back on set in time for the taping. A few days later, they finished the performance, but the chemistry between them had disappeared. Every smile was a phony attempt, avoiding every single glance. A producer who worked on the show stated that although Elton smiled for the cameras, they never actually met eyes with each other. It was all for mere display. Later on, during a radio interview, Elton would casually describe the partnership as challenging, and he would do it with a half-hearted chuckle for emphasis. Although Tina never commented in public, she did make her feelings known in private. This is consistent with her usual behavior. She referred to him as brilliant but brittle, remarked an acquaintance known for a long time. She respected his gift, but thought he let ego get in the way of greatness. Tina believed that brilliance was not about flair. The fire, the focus, and the integrity were all issues. In the event that she decided not to perform on stage again, it was not due to her ego. It was a matter of protectionism. In addition, the confrontation with Elton had been too loud, too piercing, and far too revealing to be forgotten anytime soon. Because despite the fact that Tina Turner may have moved on from the limelight, she never forgot the names of those who ignited the fire behind the scenes. This was not out of spite, but rather out of a need to survive. Consider the consequences of being silent. Throughout her career, Tina Turner has experienced a number of comebacks, victories, and reinventions. On the other hand, a lady who had been through betrayal, disdain, and heartache was hiding behind the spotlights of the stage and hit singles, not only in her personal life, but also in a field that, far too frequently, failed to defend its pioneers with enough protection. Over the course of her trip, these 6 artists were more than simply footnotes. The battles she fought, the respect she demanded, and the standards she refused to lower were all memories that were brought back to her by these items. Tabloid feuds and public takedowns were never something that Tina needed. In her collaborations and interviews, she made her assertions in silence, using predetermined lists and omitting specific individuals from her list of collaborators and attendees. Tina Turner's ability to forgive was never something that came naturally to her. It was something that was earned. Moreover, she did not turn around when that was not the case. I am grateful that you have seen this video. We sincerely hope that you found it compelling. Please remember to give this video a like and subscribe, and we will see you again soon.